Welcome to The Light, Lupus, and I, where I am your host, Salathiel Deloach. And first and foremost, I would like to provide some quick reminders before we begin. So, reminder number one, I am not a doctor. Reminder number two, I am not a medical professional. And reminder number three, I am not a counselor. What I am is an advocate diagnosed with lupus, sharing insight and experiences. And today, who's going to join me is going to be Dr. Booth. And she is indeed a doctor. But understand that it is important for you to note that she is not here to provide medical direction or diagnosis. We highly recommend that if you have some type of questions pertaining to something specific, that you would connect with your personal physician for anybody that has any type of medical needs. So the information discussed here on this episode is going to be for informational purposes only. And so without further ado, I am going to bring Dr. Ashlie Booth to the stage.
Hello there.
Oh, hello, hello. How are you?
I am good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good and excited about this episode. I'm going to jump right in by providing the people with your bio. So, growing up in a small town, Dr. Booth gained an appreciation for getting to know people. This led to her. This led her to the field of family medicine and the belief that care expands beyond just medicine. Not only does it provide diversity, but it also provides or allows her to get to know her patients and their families. After completing residency in Mississippi, Dr. Booth returned to Savannah, where she received her initial medical education at Mercer University and began practicing in the traditional healthcare system. But shortly afterwards, she realized that both she and her parents were becoming frustrated with the broken system. Therefore, she opened Healing Beyond the Stethoscope Primary Care, which is an innovative, affordable medical care practice that provides quality, personalized health care that patients deserve. Dr. Booth is also Dr. Booth also understands that life affects your health. Therefore, she uses her love of teaching to provide practical health tips on her social media platforms so that people can be informed and empowered. And so, understanding that you can find her on Instagram and Facebook as Dr. Ashlie A. Booth, MD. And she also has a website that you all can go and check out. That website is www.healingbtspc.com. Dr. Booth, Dr. Booth. So, first and foremost, I would like to ask you to provide us with some background information about your organization, about your practice.
Sure. As you mentioned, we named it intentionally Healing Beyond the Stethoscope Primary Care because I believe that that is where the healing truly starts. A lot of times you can get kind of focused in on something and a lot of people are like, oh, the doctor didn't really listen to me or that sort of thing. And I realized that medicine is all of it. It's not only this concern that you come in with, but there are all these other different factors, and I'm family medicine, so I take care of a lot of the things, right? I don't get to pick and choose and say, I'm just going to take care of this part right here. You go see somebody else for that other stuff.
Right?
So because of that, I know that there are a lot of dynamics that come into play. Someone may come in with a certain issue, and is it something metabolic going on, or is it your life? Because I understand that life affects your health. So that is one of the reasons why we started Healing Beyond the Stethoscope Primary Care. The other reason why we did it was because a lot of us were getting frustrated, as you mentioned earlier. I was getting frustrated. My patients were getting frustrated. Like, hurry up, come on in here. What's taking you so long to get in this room and talk to me? And I was like, oh my gosh,
Right?
like running behind and all of this. But then when I get in there, it's like, I waited all this time, but then you spending like 2 minutes with me. So there were so many things. And a lot of it was beyond my control. And I said, how should
Mm-hmm.
patients and people in general be treated? How do they get the best health care? How do they get the best outcomes? And the biggest factor is time. You have to be able to spend
Right.
time with people. And so that's what we do. We spend our average visit is 30 to 60 minutes long. So you're not rushed. You get a chance to really sit down, talk about what's going on with you. And then we say, okay, like we are able to now get to the root of the problem to try to figure out what's happening so that way we can truly take care of what is going on instead of putting a band-aid on it.
And that's oftentimes so much of what really does happen. The patient goes in and they have this plethora of things that they want to discuss with the doctor, and they are on a time limit. And that can be very frustrating, as you mentioned, that space of you literally just sitting in the waiting room for hours upon hours. And then you get back into the back room with the physician, and he may give you, 5 to 10 minutes. 10 is a stretch. I'll say 5 to 8 minutes, to talk about all of the things that you're dealing with. So I'll ask a question. What are some tools that you think might be beneficial for patients that deal with doctors that aren't necessarily with the private practice? What are some tools that we might be able to provide to them when going to those appointments to make sure everything that they want to talk about is discussed?
Absolutely. One of the things that they can find on my website, the healingbtspc.com, is a toolkit. And it literally is a health toolkit because I started to notice there are some disconnects that are happening, and everybody doesn't, they're not able to see a doctor like me. They're not able to get in with someone who is able to spend this much time for whatever reason, either they're not in your area or whatever it may be. So I was like, you only have 15 minutes to win it. And in that 15 minutes, we have to figure out, like, how do you tell your doctor what's going on with you? One of the first things is you have to be organized. You have to go ahead and write down what your concerns are, because I've had several people who
Absolutely.
would come to me and they would say, oh, this is going on, and then that went on, and then that. And then I'm like, okay, so we finished that up, and then the visit is over. And then I was like, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you about, and that was like the main reason why they came. And I was like,
Yes,
well, we're out of time.
exactly.
Right. And that's what's frustrating to a lot of people, because the patient is frustrated because it's like, I came here and you didn't solve my problem. And it's like, well, I solved a lot of other things. So to make sure that you don't forget that thing that's important to you, you can download that document that's on my website. You can fill it in, like you can type into it and fill it in. You can print it off. You can write the information. You can also do it as something as simple as on your phone, keeping a note pad thing on your phone. I tell people, use your phone, because that's the
Yes.
one that's going to make it to the doctor's visit with you in the first place, right? We forget a lot of things, but we don't forget the phone.
Right.
So
Not
take
gonna forget that cell phone.
don't forget the phone. So in your phone, jot down what's been going on with you and be specific about it, because you don't want to just say, oh, this happened, and then the doctor's going to say, how long has it been going on? And if you say a while, everybody's a while is different.
Hmm.
Mine could be 2 weeks,
Right.
yours could be 3 months. And that also helps us to determine the urgency of it. If it's been going on for about a
Very
week, we have a little bit more time. We can say, well, maybe we will do this treatment plan. If you say it's been going on 6 months, no, I'm not going to use this more conservative plan. I'm going to say maybe we need to start getting some imaging. We need to do this.
right.
So you got to give us a better time frame, but being organized and having your concerns written down so that way you can easily tell them what's going on will definitely make a difference on the results that you'll get from there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I 100% agree. Of course, you have all of these different items that are going to be something you've been dealing with. And so for me, as I'm getting prepared to go to my doctor's appointments, I try to put the things that are most concerning at the top, because I want to make sure that I discuss those things before, if that situation arises where that person has to leave the room, I've already discussed that main priority, or that thing that was the main priority to me. And I think that that's important for, patients to realize that, you want to make sure you hit hard, that you don't necessarily want to throw the whole book, but you want to make sure that the stuff that is truly going on with you, that you make sure at that appointment it get addressed. Yeah. And so, what are some things that you within your practice? How do you think I'll do it this way. How do you think working in a public practice versus working in the traditional practice? What are your thoughts surrounding that as it relates to patients?
There's a there's a big difference that I noticed. One, your doctor has a lot more control, and not necessarily of how they treat you, and that's important, but they also have some control over your whole healthcare experience, because that's what I hear a lot of people have an issue with.
Hmm.
It's like this whole experience. I called the office and the nurse was rude, or the receptionist was rude, or I went there and this happened.
Hmm.
So you want to make sure that the full team is on the same page and that you have a great experience overall. Because I tell a lot of people, your doctor can be
Wow.
great, but if your doctor forgets to do something, which we are human and we do, it happens a lot. Like we have good intentions and we say, oh yeah, I'm gonna
Very
send that
true.
to the pharmacy, right? Right. I'm gonna send that to the pharmacy for you, don't worry. But then we forget. And then you're like, oh, I need to call up there and let them know. Well, you call the receptionist and the
Yeah.
receptionist either wasn't that great or that nice to you. Then you get to the nurse, and they may or may not relay that message to the nurse. So now you are several days without this medication because you can't really get in contact with anybody. Your doctor usually doesn't have any control over that, depending on where they
Yes.
work.
Yes.
Right. they have they have no control over that. A doctor who owns their own practice has a lot more control over who is there, how that person treats you, the atmosphere of
Okay.
what you will experience. The other thing that I want to mention too, and I've been meaning to make a video about this, is we also are not beholden to who we work for, in the sense of, let's say that you need an image, right? But I know that the people at our x-ray area doesn't do a great job.
Mm.
So I want to send you out to another facility because I know that they do better images. I know that they may have better text, whatever it is. Well, in that sense, I'm able to do that. If I work for a healthcare system, that's a no-no. They are going to come to me and they're going to say, hey, why do we see that you're sending a lot of x-rays out to our competitor? Why would you do that? And if you say, well, because they get better
Right.
service or because they have better images there, they're going to say, we are not really concerned about that. We actually need this money to stay in house. So you can actually get in trouble. So for me, I'm not beholden to send you
Hmm.
to a certain place. I send you the best place. I find out, I talk to other providers. Hey, who are you sending your people to for this type of thing? And then when I send people, hey, what kind of experience did you have over there? Did you like it? Were they rude? Were they nice? Oh, they were
Oh
real
yeah.
great. Okay, great. I will keep them on my list. If they say no, they were rude, I will never send anyone else there, and you won't go back there, and I'll find somewhere else for us to go. I'm
Right.
super
Right.
protective of
And
my
I think
patients,
that's
if
the
you would
beautiful
notice.
part because and that's exactly where I was headed. I love the fact that you are so passionate about the people that you deal with. It's refreshing to see a physician that has that space of advocacy for the people that they serve, and to know that you're not locked in to just one person, because a lot of times we have the spaces where the doctors have the relationships with certain people, and they only send the patients there regardless to how the patient says their experience was. And that can
Mhm,
be so frustrating. Something as simple as, let's say, the space that like you were just mentioning, you have to go do imaging. And some doctors may call your insurance prior to make sure it's going to be covered. And then you have those opposite sides of the table where, hey, you need this image, you just gonna get this image. And if that image costs you $3,000, $4,000, like that's on you. But
mhm,
if the image costs too much, like there are other options, and so that space of advocacy that you provide for your patients, it's refreshing, because we don't see it often. And again, I want to thank you. I want to thank you as a patient for having that type of advocacy at the front of mind, to know that if you don't treat my patients well, my patients won't continue to be your patients. And it's just
mhm,
that simple. And I think it's that space of your patients appreciating you because they know that you are going to protect them at any cost,
mhm.
if you will. And it's a beautiful thing to see.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah. And
because
so let's
at the
talk.
end of the day, oh no, go ahead, go ahead.
No, no, no. You're perfectly fine. Go ahead.
So I think there's a little bit of delay on my end, so that's why I'm like, oh, I think,
It is.
but the thing is, like, my patients also understand that I want the best for them. And so I try to make relationships
Hmm.
with other physicians that think the same way that I do, who are looking out for patients, who want, great quality care, who want to make sure that they're taken care of. So if I meet another physician that I'm like, okay, they take good care of their people, they explain things, this person is going to feel safe there, then that's where you go. But as soon as I find out that
Right.
that is not what's happening anymore, then I say, well, we have to find somewhere else. So, because at the end of the day, I think about, where do I want to go? How do I want to be treated? How do I want my
Hmm.
parents and my family to be treated? And that is what I think about every single time I send someone or treat someone else.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's important, to know that you have someone that supports you in that manner. And I know when we originally talked, you talked about that space of, family being involved in the healthcare and how important family being involved in healthcare is. Do you mind elaborating? Because I'm sure, that the viewers that are watching, you may have someone that's not necessarily a patient, but they're a caregiver. So can you give some information as it relates to in that area?
Absolutely. I tell a lot of people, if you have a provider who is not willing to allow your family to be involved in this process with you, then you need to find someone else. Honestly, like, at the end of the day, you do. Because there are
Mhm.
some people who are great at advocating for other people, but then once when they get in that seat, having to advocate for themselves, it can be a bit overwhelming. And I myself is that person. I will go hard for my patients, for
Yeah.
my family every day, all day. But then I found myself in a health situation, and it was like, what do I do? I should speak up, but if I speak up, are they going to say, oh, she
Yeah.
thinks she's a doctor, she should cut the line? Or, so then all these things are going in,
Yeah.
so it's like, how should I handle this? Right.
Yes.
So for me, I didn't know how to advocate for myself. But the good thing is I had a couple
Mhm.
other doctors who spoke up. Oh no, girl, we're gonna get this figured out and I'm gonna find out what's going on and blah blah. So they advocated for me, and I appreciate that because they were a part of my
Yeah.
village in that moment. And so that's what I'm saying. Like, a lot of times, and the other thing I would encourage people too is that be open to allow your family to help you. A lot of them are willing to
Mm.
step up,
Ouch.
but they just, yeah, but they just don't know. Should I? Can I say something?
Yeah.
Do they want me to know what's going on? So you're trying to navigate this whole situation. You don't know what to
Yeah.
do. But if you allow your family in, it really can help your whole process, because people can start standing up for you in ways that you never knew that they would or that they
Mhm.
could. And it can make your burden seem a little bit lighter, because they can start holding on to things for you, and they can tell you things that you may not have heard in that visit the first time. And they say, oh no, mom, or oh no,
Yes.
dad. They actually said blah blah blah, but because you're dealing with so much, you didn't hear it. You have somebody who can kind of help translate and help keep up with some of these things for you, and it's not seen as being weak. It really is not. And hear me on that, because
Yeah.
I know a lot of people, like, we want to be so private, we want to keep things to ourselves. I don't want to bother anybody. But if they find out, because I've had a lot of families who didn't tell people about what was going on with them until it got very far gone,
Mhm.
and people were angry.
Yeah.
And they were like, why you didn't say anything? And they felt like they
I
were
can imagine.
protecting the person. Yeah, they felt like they were protecting the person. And they were like, no, I wish I would have known. I could have done something, all this kind of stuff. So start bringing people in, and really kind of let go of some of these secrets, because if they know, then they also now are able to say, okay, this is something I need to tell my doctor about, so that we can keep this on the radar, so that I know what to look forward to and how to make sure I take care of myself.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm guilty. I'm guilty. I have been that patient, that space of privacy, not wanting anybody to know what it is that I'm dealing with. Excuse me. Not wanting anybody to know the things that I'm dealing with, and it gets frustrating sometimes because, like you said, you go into those appointments, and by the time you leave the appointment, you had so much that you talked about. By the time you leave that appointment, you're like, he told me to do something. He told me to do something. You literally stepped on all 10 of my toes. I just want you to know that, because I was that person. And in that same space of advocacy that you mentioned, I can advocate like no, not one for other people. Well, I could at one point, could advocate for other people with no problem, but would get into the room and have that same exact moment that you said. I'm not a doctor, but I know that my presence can appear kind of, forceful, if you will. And so that space of talking up, and it's like, ugh, am I going to scare this doctor away? Is he going to say, I'm sorry, ma'am, you can't be my patient anymore? And it's like, ooh. I might not need to say nothing. So what I had to do was learn how to finesse. I'm very good with my words, and so I had to learn how to communicate effectively and also not make people feel like I am being a threat to them, like I know more about them, about what's going on than they do. And a lot of times we as patients, we do our own homework, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so we go into a doctor's office and they tell us XYZ, and it's like, but I read. I read that this is a side effect or that this is that. Like, can we talk about that? And then it takes you right back to the space of how much more time do I have in this visit for us to actually have an authentic conversation around this, But I definitely was that patient. Now, again, like I said, I've learned to finesse it and, find a better way of presentation versus just, you know.
And I think that's good. And I appreciate you bringing that up about how to advocate, because I think that's a really, really good point. And I was going to say something about that
Hmm.
um, later, but I feel like now is an appropriate time because there is a way to do something, right? A lot of times people think advocate, I have to roar, roar, roar. Really, advocacy is just speaking up, it's saying what you have to say. And like you said, being effective with it. So knowing how you say
Right.
it, and a lot of your doctors are open to like certain things because we, especially as
Right.
family medicine, I have to know a whole lot about a lot of different things. So you may have this one specific thing
Yeah.
that you have done some personal homework on. You have gone down all the different research things and like, oh, but I also read this and I'm like, that is amazing because I may not be that well versed on it because I didn't spend that much time
Yeah.
on that one particular thing. So now that you have educated me on that, okay, let's see how I can put what information I do have along with this. So if you approach your provider appropriately and say, "Hey, I was also thinking about this," or "What about blah blah blah?" A lot of us are open to it. The one thing I'm noticing though is some people will say, "Well, I heard this, so I want to do this," and they give us no options.
Mm.
And then I have
Yeah.
to say, I understand that this is what you believe might be the best course of action. However, we have to take into account X, Y, and Z. Like we have to, because I have some people say, well, my cousin was diagnosed with this too, and this is what her doctor did, and blah, blah, blah. And I say, I understand, and that
Hmm.
potentially could work for you. But does your cousin also have these other things that you have? No. So then we have to take that into consideration because now this medicine
Yeah.
may not be the best one for you. So if you bring the information and you are willing to be open to let your doctor put their expertise with the information that you have to come up with a good plan for you, then I think a lot of us are open to it
Hmm.
versus you just saying, I saw this commercial or I saw this and I researched this is what I want to do. And you just need to send it to the pharmacy. That's when we will start to have
Yeah.
like a, I don't know.
I get it. I get it. I work with quite a few patients, and they fall into that space. They have other family members that have been diagnosed with something, and they probably don't have the same signs or symptoms, but they see that their family member is doing well. And ultimately, as a patient, I just want to be doing well. And
Mhm.
so if it works for them, then regardless of what the risk may be, I want to try it, and like you said, that space of almost a potential demand that they do try it. But as the doctor, the physician, it's your space of saying, hey, yeah, your family member might be taking XYZ or doing XYZ, but are they taking these medications? Because your side effects along with the medication that they're taking, it might cause more damage. They're not taking as many medications, or they're not taking any medications beyond that one. And so a lot of times it's a moment of having to help the patient, if you will, see that difference, because a lot of times we don't think about it. Again, we just want to feel good, not be hurting. And so I think that's a very important space with physicians to be able to have those conversations and do it respectfully. Yes, I understand that as a doctor, you going to school to do this and you know what you know, but as a patient, I want to trust you. And these are some of my ideas. How can we become a partnership, or how can this become a partnership? And not even just with the primary physician. Like, can we pull everybody that I may be going to? Can we get together and become, this salathiel team? So if she's we're going to change a medication or something of that nature. Like, we all know that medication has changed or it's increased or whatever the case may be. And I think, just listening to what you just said, that's one of the things that you find pleasure in actually doing. Again, that moment of advocacy, letting the patient know, hey, I know you really want this, but let me help you. And so again, a valuable moment, to be able to listen to a doctor say that they do these things for their patients.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I don't know what's going on here, but nevertheless, so within your practice, have you ventured into anything from a technical perspective, any type of, because we have AI and all of these wonderful people that exist in the world, newly found, if you will. Do you do anything with your patients from that perspective?
As far as incorporating AI into the practice, is that what you mean?
AI, AI, I guess I shouldn't use AI. Some of the doctors that I go to, and this is probably not within your practice, but we have a headset. It's usually with checking my eyes and things of that nature. And so just curious, the telemedicine, things of that nature, how are those things implemented or embedded into your organization, or are they?
Sure. There are some tech savvy things that people can do. Some of them, like for primary care, it's a little bit limited on the
Okay.
technology piece on what I have people to do, like you said, like checking the eyes or something like that. There is this one cool tool that
Hmm.
that can actually check your ears and can connect to the computer and you can see it. I use it in my
Wow.
practice. I don't necessarily use it like virtually because sometimes I'm concerned if a patient tries to use that sort of device at home, are they going to go too far? All that kind of stuff, even though they sell that same device like
Makes
on
sense.
Amazon as well. But as far as incorporating in my practice, I do like people feel like it's really cool. So, one of the biggest procedures that I do in my office is ear cleanings, earwax removal. People
Okay.
are like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah, because a lot of people they think they're cleaning the ears and they're taking the Q-tip and stuff, and all we're doing is just packing it in.
Fortunate.
And
Yeah.
then I look in there and I see it, and I have one otoscope that I can use. I look in and I can see it myself. But then it really
Hmm.
changes the game because I have one now where I can show it to them on a camera and I can look in there and they can see
Wow.
and they're like, "Oh, what? Oh my gosh!" So, so I
Yeah.
show them the
Like, what am I
before.
doing?
What am I doing? Right, exactly. What am I doing? So I show them the before. Then we clean it. We do a very gentle, simple process. Usually takes about 5, maybe 10 minutes. We clean it out. I show them the after, how it's totally clean, and then they're like, "Oh my gosh, I
Yeah.
can hear so much better. I didn't, I didn't
Clean your gates. Clean your gates.
know." I always tell people, I'm like, listen, before you start putting your earbuds in your ear, before you start putting Q-tips in your ear, or any of that kind of stuff, you want to make sure that somebody's looked in there to make sure that they're clean. So that's some of the technology that we use. We also use video visits. So the telemedicine, I can hop
Okay.
on a call with people like that and we can discuss certain things. They have better access. They can text us because we understand that some things can be handled over a text, like simple stuff.
Hmm.
Hey,
Yeah.
I may need a refill on something. You don't have to call the office, leave a message, all that kind of stuff. You send a text and then we see it and we say, oh, okay. And then we send it back to you. But the good thing is that people get an email and a text message to know that we sent their medicine to the pharmacy. So it's not like
Yes.
she
Yes.
said she was going to send so and so, but I don't know. And I never heard from the pharmacy. It's like, oh, okay. If she says she sent it, then when she does send it, you will get a notification both ways to know that
Yeah.
she sent it. So that's another way to like keep that communication going so nothing falls through the cracks. And
Hmm.
email. The other thing is like email, because sometimes if you have something that's a little bit more, a little bit longer than a text message, but it's like, hey,
Hmm.
can we handle this later? Whatever. And then the good thing is I see all of that stuff and then I determine, hey, can you jump on a, because text message is not the best all the time for visits. And this is what I
True.
want people to think
True.
about too. There are a lot of companies that are telemedicine companies that are popping up, and some of them are text message only. That's dangerous to
Mm.
me because there are
Wow.
certain things that you may not be able to convey in a text message that needs to be, said. So sometimes people send me a text and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I think. And then we get far enough along and I'm like, hey, do you have
Hmm.
time for a quick phone call? That way I can ask you some questions. I can really clarify what's happening and then I can decide on like the treatment plan and what really would be the most effective to help you get the best level of care. So we incorporate a
Right.
lot of those different things. So and we try to figure out like what makes sense for people because we understand that people also have different lifestyles and I may
That's
not be
true.
able to do a call but I can do a text. So what makes it flexible so people can still get the care that they need?
Yeah, I'm really a firm believer if we're texting or shooting an email and there is an understanding within three of those messages, it's like, hey, we got to get on the telephone or we got to get on a Zoom call or whatever the case may be. But once we've gone back and forth three times, like we're just not clearing it up and it's not going to work through
Right.
this text message. So I think that's
Mhm.
a good thing that you have those tools embedded, and a lot of practices don't necessarily have that tool in place where if I send your prescription, you will know that I sent it. Like you sometimes we're waiting to hear from the pharmacy to say, hey, your medicine is ready, but
Mhm.
that space of as a patient, I'm hurting, I need my medication. Can you add me into that message when you're sending it over to the physician? So I'll know I can hop in my car and head over.
Right.
uh, and that's literally, I believe, the way that, your patients are, they receive that email or that text message and it's like, okay, I can leave because typically the pharmacy is going to have it ready in a couple of minutes. So I can go ahead and pull over and get my medication and start the process of healing, if you will.
Mhm.
So kudos to you for that implementation. Yeah. And during we talked about the telemedicine during the pandemic. How was that process for you?
In the pandemic, I was kind of like in an interesting kind of transitioning from one practice and then starting my practice. And this
Oh
is the
wow.
interesting, yeah. So the interesting thing is I worked for this other company and I knew that telemedicine would be a good fit, whether that's phone call,
Mhm.
that's video visits, whatever it is, because people were scared. They were
Right.
terrified to go into the
Absolutely.
office. But if you have high blood pressure or whatever you're dealing with, you still need to be seen. We still need to figure out
That's
what's
right.
going on. But I understood the level of concern and I understood that fear that was there because even as providers, we're still trying to figure out like what is going on and how is this going to affect us.
Right.
And that company did not grant me the access. Like, so they sent out this big email and said, we're going to offer telemedicine to the offices, blah, blah, blah. I was like, oh, great. So I jump on real quick and submit my application so that our office could do it. And it was like denied. And I was like, wait a minute.
The nerve.
The nerve. Why'd you guys see me? What did I do? So I sent the information to the guy and I was like, what happened? He was like, oh, you have to get clearance from somebody. So then I send them a message and they say, oh, we're just not approving your office at this time. Didn't give me a reason why.
Oh,
And yeah, so I was like, okay, that's fine. My patients still need to be taken care of. We're going to do phone
right.
calls then. So that's what that's what we did. So I would call people, and
Yeah,
those who didn't want to come in, I would talk to them over the phone and figure out what the issue was. And then if I felt like they needed to come in, I'm like, I really need for you to come in. We're doing all the things. We're maxed up. We're gowned up.
yeah,
All this kind of stuff. So that way we can still take care of you. And that was one of the moments that I said, when I get out on my own, I am going to do this better. And I don't have anybody limiting me, telling me that, no, you just have a
right.
limited way of taking care of your patients. Like, yeah, that I was,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
was,
Yeah, I can only imagine the space of knowing about the tools, first and foremost, knowing about the tools, knowing that they exist, knowing that they definitely could be a help and being denied in the midst of a pandemic where we don't want anyone out in the streets. But I need to see my patients. Like, I understand that seeing a patient through the different telemedicines is not the ideal, but it provides something. And it also provides the human connection that so many did not receive during the pandemic. And I can
mhm.
imagine, like, from your perspective, what were some of the things you noticed within your patients, if you will, during the pandemic?
There was a lot of, there was just a lot of kind of uncertainty. A lot of that, again, was the
Hmm.
fear. Didn't want to come in because I don't know what this thing is going to do, blah, blah, blah. And a few people who didn't want to wear the mask because, my rights.
Ah,
And so I should be able to do what I want. And I understand. And I said, I understand. And I also, because in that transition too, I was also pregnant. So I was also like
oh,
very
wow.
cautious and couldn't, I was like not trying to get
Protecting
myself sick
too.
with this baby. Right. So I'm protected too. So I was like, yeah, you have a right for that. And I also have a right to not allow you in here because I'm not trying to get sick.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so
very
that
true.
was the thing. But most of them, most were respectful. Most were very forgiving because, like I said, when I worked for this other practice, I told them a lot of times my hands are tied. I can't do this. I can't do that. Unfortunately, this happened and I have no control over it. But I think the thing that made the best of that situation was that I was always honest with them. I always kept the communication with them. I told them this is what is happening. I'm doing the best that I can. What is a workaround for this? So, with that, whatever
Hmm.
fears and issues that they had, I was able to have that conversation with them to kind of talk to them about it and say, okay, this is the new information that I have. So this is how we're going
Right.
to treat it now, or these are the new guidelines that we're going to put in place and that sort of thing. So having that information, that communication, I think helped them to feel a lot better
Yeah,
about it. And I had to make sure I stayed up on things because I knew that they were
absolutely.
trusting me, right? They're trusting me. So it's like, okay, girl,
Absolutely.
you better have this information right. You better follow what's going on.
Hmm.
So that, but because I knew that they trusted me, I knew that, hey, I need to make sure that I take care of the things and that I communicate that with them. So having that open communication, I believe, made a difference.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's an important space, patient doctor relationships, planning for to do this light the way tour, that moment of I want to, do at least some videos with doctors, and that reflection for other patients to be able to see, like, doctors are just doctors that are humans. We're all just humans, and that space of being able to have a conversation with your doctor, to glean and gain information that you might not otherwise be privy to, because as a doctor, or you have exposure to information on a different level. And so this is, to me, this is an opportunity for patients to see the human side of a doctor, you know because you have a beautiful personality and you are comical, to say the least. I think I think you and I met at the Heart event that was held at
Hmm.
the Civic Center. That's where we
Yes.
originally met, and like you just have this light about you. And we ran back into each other at the Air Market Arena, and that same light was still shining. And I'm like, listen, I know who my first visitor for
Oh.
this show is going to be. I know without a shadow of a doubt. I just got to figure out what her schedule looks like. And as your schedule, it was just perfect. I was like, yes, this is the timing that I wanted. Like everything just literally it lined up with no problems. And so I knew, I knew who I wanted to be my first doctor that I had the opportunity to speak with. And it has been an absolute pleasure, to allow the audience to get to see you. I'm not sure how many people are familiar with you, your practice being here in the city of Savannah, but I know at that event that was held at the Civic Center, I was mind blown to see the number of African American doctors that were in this city.
Mm.
Can you talk a little bit about that group of people, the services that the different levels of services that exist within that community?
So I practice what they call direct primary care.
Hmm.
And a lot of people want to change it and say they call it direct patient care, because really the relationship is between the doctor and the patient. There is no
Hmm.
middleman. There's no one else telling us what to do, because one of the things that I found out that was a hindrance was not only the corporate people who were over me telling me you can't do this, you can't do that. The other thing was insurance. And I did not realize how much
Hmm.
of a role insurance played in patient care until the end of my residency, when I specifically knew and had been taught and trained that this is the number one medicine that you use to treat this disease. This is the standard. This
Hmm.
is what we prescribe. And I sent it, and the insurance said, no, we want you to send something else. And I was like, but
Yeah.
that's not the
Yeah.
indicated
That two
medicine.
step. That
It's
two step.
the two-step. And so it was so
Hmm.
frustrating, and it kept happening time after time after time. And it's like, I know that this is an issue that you have. I know the next step is, either an MRI, like that's the next thing. And it says, you need to go to
Exactly.
physical therapy first for 6 weeks, and then we can consider an MRI. So we're going to delay you 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So all of these
Yeah.
different barriers, and you're like, what gives? Like, how can I move and navigate around that? And that's where I found this community of doctors called Direct Primary Care. And they are really taking medicine back to what people say it used to be. You may have heard from either your grandparents or something like that talked about, yeah, I remember when my doctor knew us, and the doctor used to come to the house, and all these
Yes.
types of stories, right?
Know me by
That
name.
whole, like, and the doctor was a part of the community and knew the whole family. Like, that's such a beautiful thing. So one of the things that I wanted to do
Yes.
was practice medicine like that, and this is the way to do it. So
Hmm.
it is directly being able to have that partnership that you mentioned earlier with the patient, discussing what's going on, how this is my knowledge, and this is what I say, that these are the different options that you have. But this is your
Right.
life. So how do we marry my knowledge with your life and put it together and make it make sense? So that's how we always come up with a personalized, customized plan. So that's how I do it in my practice. And a lot of the other doctors who do it the same way. There's Dr. Jamal Lawrence, who's a primary care physician as well. He's family medicine. He is with Harvest Health, MD. So he practices, and he also does what they call lifestyle medicine. So it's talking kind of like plant based and those sorts of things. So if that's what you're interested in,
Okay.
definitely look him up. The other physician that was at that conference as well was Dr. Abby Abisagun. She's an
Hmm.
endocrinologist. So all things hormones, diabetes and thyroid, and even kind of weight issues that you're kind of concerned about, all of that kind of stuff. She does that as well. And I will say, and I can speak for all of us because we meet from time to time, we are happier. And there's some other doctors in the area as well that are practicing this way. But
Mhm.
when your doctor is happy, then you as a
Yes.
patient is happy. Because let me tell you,
Yes.
burnout is real. And I've
It's real.
spoken to some patients who have been in front of a doctor, and I was like, oh, that was burnout. Like when you go to your doctor and
Yeah.
you tell them this is the issue that I have, and they throw up their hands and say, you know what, I'm done with this, and they walk out, your doctor was burnout.
Yeah. It's a
And
rough space
but
to be
then,
in.
yeah, yeah. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe. But some of these things that I'm hearing happening, and especially now I've heard about it from doctors that I have known of, and I'm like, they did
Mhm.
that? Then I say, that's not them. And I know that it can happen because it started to happen to me in
Right,
residency.
right.
Seeing 20 to 30 patients a day is not normal. That is what your
No,
doctor
ma'am, it
has to
isn't.
see. It is not. We are smart people and doctors are smart people, and I give you that. But the demand of 20 to
Mhm.
30 people a day is too much. And there are doctors who are out here
Absolutely.
who love their profession, but they are scared to death that they are going to hurt somebody, and not intentionally,
Mhm.
unintentionally, because maybe they forgot to ask a question. Maybe they forgot to send a medicine to the pharmacy. Maybe they forgot,
Yeah.
whatever. Like this stuff is keeping people up at night, and it's terrifying to the point where
Mm.
they are thinking about leaving the profession. Doctors are not lasting in the field as much as they used to anymore because of the burnout. So
Jeez.
this is another way for us to kind of take medicine back, really provide quality care to patients so that they can ultimately have that quality health and lifestyle that they want.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's important, that space of like you were mentioning, doctors having or seeing 20 plus patients in the run of a day. And it's like, how effective is that care? If you have to, that's one of those 6 to 8 minute moments where you're in and
Mhm.
you're out if you're respectful of the patient's time, because you have patients that are literally sitting in the waiting room and you probably even double booked yourself and didn't even realize it. And so in your mind, I need to be dealing with two patients right now. So you're walking in and out
Right.
of two offices, trying to make sure that you see the different people, and you're allowing your nurses to do all of the blood checks and all of the things, but you're trying to see two patients at one time because you've overbooked yourself, and so I
Right.
think that that's a very interesting and valid, speaking as a patient. I literally have been in a situation where I waited in the waiting room for 4 hours, just to
Wow.
see a doctor, because I was in just that much pain and I needed what I needed, and so my opportunity to go in the back with the doctor and tell him all of the things, and he did the basics, the hand checks and the feeling on the touching of the legs to make sure all of the veins are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And you look good was the response. Oh, no, no, no.
Mm. Wow.
No, no, that's insufficient. I know, like I'm not telling you that you're lying about the fact that I look good, because I mean I know I look good, but I know that fact. I don't need you to confirm something that I already know. I came in here because I'm in pain. And so what I
Yeah.
need you to do is tell me or help me come to the realization of why I'm in pain. Look good,
Right.
the mirror does that for me. I mean, realistically, the mirror can,
Yeah.
me and the mirror are friends now. So I can look myself in the mirror and see, yeah, girl, you look good today. Yeah. So, and that becomes a frustration. And even to the space of, it's time to find another doctor, because I don't need
Mm.
every time that I'm feeling bad or every time that I need to come to your office, one, to have to sit here for 4 hours, or two, to get in the back for you to just tell me that I look good and I'm hurting.
Mhm.
That's not going to work. And so I let patients know, that space of understanding that they do have rights. Yes, the
Right.
doctor is who he or she is, but you as a patient, you have rights. And somebody sitting in a waiting room for 4 hours, that's just foolishness. It's
Yeah.
foolishness. And so that
It's
space of hearing you
amazing.
say,
Yeah. No, 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 you're right.
yeah,
Because that's absolutely amazing that I knew of someone who said that they sat in a waiting area for like 8 hours at like a primary care office. And I said, you was
mhm,
there all day. And they were there long enough to do
a job.
fasting labs. So you're
Absolutely.
absolutely right. And And that's the frustration that patients have too, because it's like, you don't respect my time. Like I've sat
Hmm.
here for 4 hours, and then I come in here for 10 minutes for you to say, oh, okay, you're okay. It's like, no, I'm not okay. And this whole situation is not okay. So you're absolutely like that. That blows my mind. Cause for me, I do not allow my people to wait longer than 10 minutes. It's like a 10-minute, because we
Yeah.
don't double book, we don't overbook. We only have a set number of people that we're going
Right.
to see that day. We leave enough space on there for acute visits so people can come in when they need to be seen. Because that the other thing is, when you call and you say I'm sick today, and they say we can get you in 2 weeks, and that's good for a lot of places. 2 weeks is good.
Come, come on.
What
But am I
they
still
say,
that sick?
right? Or you can go to urgent care, and it's like, are you kidding me, to go talk to somebody who I don't know? But I guess I'll go because I don't feel good and I want to feel better. Like, it's like we have to do better.
Right.
And so for me, how can I do my part? And that's what we say, let's just change this up. Let's make the schedule make sense. And then let's also leave enough room in there where people who have some acute stuff have access to same day
Hmm.
or next day appointments so that they can be seen when these things pop up. Because sickness pops up when it pops up. Like
Right.
and we
Right.
have to
It
be able
doesn't care.
to deal with it. Right. It doesn't care. Mm-mm.
Yeah, and it's so interesting that space of, you have your patients that come and tell you those experiences, and again, that moment you were talking about earlier where, okay, my patient told me they had this experience. It's time for me to do some advocacy, or let's look to find you a different doctor that will be of help to you and that will actually listen to you. It's a powerful thing to have a team of physicians that are willing to listen to what the patient has to say. And so often, speaking to different patients, they feel like they go into these appointments and they feel unheard and they feel unseen and they feel like they're talking to a brick wall. You mentioned earlier that space of someone possibly wanting to do a natural form of care. And you go into the doctor and it's like, this is something that I want to try. What are your thoughts on me trying this? In that moment, like you said, again, let me do some research. So
Mhm.
to the patients, and I know for a fact that you don't necessarily deal from the holistic in that perspective. You mentioned someone else, but what are your thoughts surrounding the space of a patient coming into your office and stating that that's something that they want to do? What does that plan, if you will, entail? Not going deep into detail, but what are some of the checks that you would do for a patient in that perspective?
Absolutely. So to this is one thing I'll say, holistic, because a lot of people, they will ask me, oh, do you do holistic care? And I was like,
Hmm.
absolutely. And they're like, yes, I finally found a doctor who doesn't prescribe medicine. I was like, wait, hold up now. What now?
Yep,
I was like,
exactly. Exactly. Here we
I was
are.
like, no.
Yes, this
So
is the
then
moment.
I had to, this is the moment. So I said, let me look up, because maybe I'm using the wrong term. And then when I looked up
Hmm.
holistic really means looking at the whole of something, looking
Exactly.
at all of
Exactly.
it, not just looking at one part. But we have run with it and taken it to mean like supplements
Or
and natural and all
hmm.
of that, but that's not necessarily what holistic is. So in that sense, I do look at the whole person, because like I said, if
There
you
you
have
go.
high blood pressure, is it a metabolic thing, or is it life and you stressed out at your job because the people are doing too much, or life is life, and whatever it is that's what's happening, and that's what we need to focus on. So I look at that whole picture, and that's why that 30 to 60 minutes is important, because then we can kind of
Hmm.
figure out, like, okay, let's look at this. When are we noticing these issues? All of that kind of stuff. But then, if you want to try something natural, you want to do supplements, any of that kind of stuff, then it's like, let's make sure that we're doing it safely. Are you on any other medications? Is this going to interact? Does this make sense? I had someone with diabetes and they wanted to do cinnamon and chromium. Looking that up, those two can be beneficial along with apple cider vinegar, because apple cider vinegar has been known to help stabilize your blood sugar levels.
Hmm.
The thing is, if you have uncontrolled diabetes, cinnamon, chromium, and apple cider vinegar is not going to get you there. And we just, now, can we add it to
Mm-mm.
something else? Maybe. But just saying this is all I want to take, if that's what you tell me, I have to respect that. I'm not going to say, well, no, we're still going to do metformin, or we're still going to do this prescribed medicine and I need you to take it and come see me. I'm not going to
Hmm.
do that. I am going to say, I don't think that's wise, because I don't think this is where it's going to take you. Because I also know that your long term goal is to be able to see your children and your grandchildren, and if your A1C is this
Hmm.
high for this long, that's not going to happen. Statistically, that's not going to happen, or you're not going to see them the way you
Right.
want to see them. Okay.
Hmm.
So, with that, let's figure out how to marry all of it and put it all together. With these supplements and stuff, let's also talk about diet, because diet is important. And I actually did an interview with Miss Karen Cooper. She has left Hold Brighter Day, so don't go looking for Miss Karen at Brighter Day anymore. But she was the guru of their area, of their supplements, and they were gracious enough to allow me to come in and interview on site and video record there. But Miss Karen talked about, a lot of people come in and they're looking for a specific supplement and all this kind of stuff, and she talks to them and says, hey, what is it that you're really trying to achieve? And then she says, well, have
Hmm.
you tried, and she starts talking to them about their diet, because we can't continue to eat all this fast food but then say, I'm gonna take this
There
cinnamon
you, yes.
supplement, right?
Yes.
So we have to put all of it together.
Absolutely.
So that's a long way for me to say that I am open to it. I believe that it has its place. It's just we have to figure out what is the right way to do it and how to make it make sense for you. But I am open to it.
Absolutely. And you did exactly what I needed you to do in that moment, because a lot of times we're talking to people and they talk about holistic. And I'm like, that's your mind, body, soul, and spirit. Like that's all of you. That's all of you. And it's like, no, I'm not talking about that. It's like, oh, okay. So that was the moment, to help people understand that it's important to know what you mean. Are you
Mm-hmm.
looking for that space of someone to acknowledge all of the things that are going on in your life, as a physician, knowing, having a physician that has time to even deal with those parts of you,
Mm-hmm.
and so I truly think that it's important to know what it is that you are really asking someone for. Again, the mind, the body, like some doctors literally, they want to address all of you in the midst of medical care. And I think that it's important, because if you give someone some medication, and it has side effects, and you have no idea of what type of problems it's going to cause them mentally, because they might be taking some mental medication for their mental effects. Like, you got to deal with the whole body of the person, not just the symptoms of the person,
Right.
and so that has been one of those conversations that comes up, unfortunately, regularly, that space of wanting to do something holistic. So that's kind of why I wanted to end, or bring our session to a close in that area, for people to understand what that looks like. So we have a little less than a minute left. So I would like for you, if there is anything that you would like to share with the audience, anything you want the audience to know, the floor is open to you.
Thank you. One of the last few things I would say is be willing to advocate for yourself or for your loved one and figure out how you can do that. If you don't have a provider that makes sense for you, know that you have options and be willing to look around and find someone that does, because you really want to develop a partnership with your doctor. That is one of the most intimate relationships that you will ever have. I have people who will tell me things that they wouldn't even tell their spouse, right? So that tells you just
Hmm.
how deep that relationship is. And you want to be able to have that relationship so that they can really figure out what it is that they need to do for you. So once you put all that together, make sure that you find the person that is your person that makes sense, because you want to make
Mhm.
sure that they're going to help make sure that you live the life that you want and deserve.
Absolutely. Dr. Ashlie Booth, I want to tell you thank you. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for this opportunity to connect patient to doctor and make it real. And I also want to thank you for choosing or accepting the call to be my first person to interview on this Light the Way tour. And I can say nothing less than the fact that I know the viewers as they look at the video, or those that were here with us and those that are going to watch the replay. I know that you have shined a light on some things that patients didn't even
Mm.
realize were real, or didn't realize that they had access to. And so, again, I thank you for joining us today on The Light, Lupus, and I, where I am your host, Salathiel Deloach. Be blessed.